Greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome to Busy Playing Something, episode 12. I'm joined by Sean. You were about to say something. Did I interrupt something?
Yeah, well, from my side, you were going all fuzzy, and I was like, "Oh, wait, are we starting now?" And then all of a sudden, you froze, and then you came back. It's like, "Oh, by the way, salutations." And I was like, "Oh, okay, we're back in. We're back in.
I'm finishing the podcast already, and you're like, "Hold on, it's been frozen."
Wow, big surprise! Like I've been frozen the whole time, and you've just talked the entire time, and just like normal. It's like, don't need me.
Yeah, just doing my own thing and just answering my own questions. So we are Busy Playing Something. We're an Australian video game podcast. You can find us on YouTube. Now, if you have been watching previously, you're probably noticing, hey, this looks different. What's going on? Where is my yellow, gold streamer effects? That isn't clearly what's on the screen today. So, a few updates. Busy updating something. We're going to call this segment where if we have any updates, we're going to just do this as we go. Like everything, it's just made up on the fly. So a few slight changes. We will now be recording fortnightly. So the podcast will now be a fortnightly podcast. That will kind of allow us to really think about our topics a bit more deeply, do a bit more research, and have a bit more of an in-depth conversation. We want this show to be more of a personality-driven show anyway. You can get the news literally a million different ways. You're coming to us for, I don't know. Why are you coming? Yeah, us. I don't know. I feel like that's more of a deterrent.
Really?
Well, me anyway. I feel like I'm. You know what? You are a reason to come. That came out completely wrong. You are not the reason to come. Anyway, moving to fortnightly. And we are trying out a different layout. So we're going to be having some live gameplay. Well, not live gameplay, pre-recorded gameplay in the background. We'll try to make it kind of themed and matching some of the conversations we're going to have. But yes, fortnightly. So every Thursday at 9 a.m, you'll see the YouTube and audio feeds go live at the exact same time. And again, we are an independent Australian podcast, so make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts at Busy Playing Something. Sean, am I forgetting anything?
I think we need an explanation as to why we've got the gameplay footage. Have you been watching too many TikToks where they've got the jumping Minecraft videos or like the Subway Surfers footage, and you're just like, oh yeah, story time isn't going to capture everyone's imagination. We got to put some, video on there to distract everyone.
If it means they're not looking at our faces, I think that's my face anyway. I think that's okay. No, because I don't have TikTok. And two, I don't know. I just feel like, we're talking video games. Let's just have some video games playing in the background. I actually haven't played Astro yet, so I'm kind of like trying not to look at it too much so I don't spoil myself. But you probably can tell we're going to be talking a little bit about Astrobot and a few other things. So the kind of theme of today's episode is Concord died so Astrobot can thrive or shine. And it's kind of talking about the duality of what was kind of one of the biggest flops, probably one of, if not the biggest flop in PlayStation history. And then Astrobot, which is being celebrated as one of the best platformers of the generation. So we're going to kind of go through all that today. But Sean, more broadly, how you been? What have you been up to since we've spoken or seen each other on the podcast?
Yeah, not too much actually. I've as you mentioned or at least alluded to, I did play Astrobot, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I was having a look at kind of my collection of games, my backlog, and I've got a fair few of them there. And luckily enough, this year I'm already at 20 completed games. So I'm pretty happy with that, or beaten games. And it's kind of surprising. Like, one of the games that I had was called Metal Arms Glitch in the System. And this is a game that I played on the GameCube years ago. I think my save file was literally from like 2008 or something like that. And I was like, oh, I'll give this game a go because I know it's got multiplayer and that sort of stuff. And it turns out I was like 2 missions away from finishing the game.
Right.
Like, I was already so far into it. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll just beat these 2 levels. And did that in an hour. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's another game done. And I think that's kind of gone to show that there's a lot of games that at least I've got in my collection where I'll get to maybe halfway, 3/4 of the way, and I've stopped for whatever reason, maybe a new shiny thing or whatever it is. And I'm starting to go back to them.
That's good.
And I'm starting to finish them. And
opposite
it's
of
a
me.
good feeling.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. Like, I am a bit more, like, I was never that guy that was like buying heaps of games that I wasn't playing. Like, you seem to have been in a period of time, like especially when we talk about like 10 years ago, we were just like, Sean was buying so many games. It just felt like he was just forever purchasing and spending every dollar he earned in our gaming retail days on games. where I was a bit more selective, and I still am that type of person today. I hate when I don't, like, if I pick up a game and I don't finish it, it just really... I used to be like that with platinums. If I didn't platinum it, I was a bit like, oh, but now I've moved on from that. I'm a bit more like, I can live with the gold trophy saying that I finished the game, but I get a bit weird when I put a game down, and I don't like that I can't delete the trophy list. Like, I know you can do it if you haven't earned a trophy, but I would like to do it if I've got like 5-10%, because it's just like, I'm trying to think. Well, I think the last ones that I had done that for, a few of the Ubisoft games, I think even the Assassin's Creed games, I think I brought Valhalla, and a few others, and I just never really get through them. But anyway, that's a conversation for...
Well, that's the thing. Like, I saw that, and like, so EB Games have their level 5 stuff every year where you earn the carrots for buying and trading and all that sort of stuff. And I looked at my carrot total for this year. Now, I've been level 5 for like 3-4 years, easy. So I've always spending money. And this year I had a look at my total just in case, to see where I was at. And I think I had like 54 carrots, which is the equivalent of nothing. So there's no way in hell I'm getting to level 5 next year. And funnily enough, I used that in front of my dad. Because my dad's always like, "Oh, you're spending so much money on games," and now I'm literally like, "Yeah, I've literally spent like nothing in the last 12 months on games."
It's the equivalent of like Qantas frequent flyer points being a gold platinum member, and you're just like, "No, I just need my EB level 5."
Yeah. I was getting that every year, but now it's like I'm not even gonna get that. It's not even coming, so I'm not gonna have that for a whole year. Can't have that gold card. Oh no, I can't enter that Facebook group. Oh, what a shame.
Oh no,
Anyway.
I don't think I ever made it. I think I'm still level 4. I've been in level 4 for the longest time, but I don't trade things in. Maybe that's why I just kind of buy my AAA.
You got to be in the top 9,999 carrot earners for the year.
Which I think I am, but I don't know. Maybe not. Well, clearly not. But anyway,
Clearly.
we got a lot to talk about. So what we're going to do is start off with the Concord discussion, but we're going to kind of angle it a little differently. So we kind of want to look at the Jim Ryan era of PlayStation. He stepped into the role in 2019 and obviously retired earlier this year. And kind of look at what has gone on since he's been at the helm of PlayStation, and if ultimately it was a success or failure. So I'll read through some of the notes that I had put down. So Jim Ryan's run as CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment has often been met with criticism from gamers and gaming press alike. I just want to note, this is my writing here. So watch out, IGN. From Sony's push into re-releasing some of PS4's greatest games with a shiny coat of paint, to the aggressive and arguably failed approach to games as a service, to the purchase of studios that have had questionable outcomes. We ask, was Jim Ryan's run as CEO a failure? News broke last week that Concord, a first-party AAA games as a service that launched only 2 weeks ago, was being pulled off stores. In a blog post, the creative director of Concord wrote, "We've been listening closely to the feedback since the launch of Concord on PlayStation 5 and PC, and we want to thank everyone who's joined us on the journey aboard the North Star. Your support and passionate community has grown around the game and has meant the world to us. However, there have been many qualities of the experience while many qualities of the experience resonated with players, we also recognize that the other aspects of the game in our initial launch didn't land the way we would have intended. Therefore, at this time, we have decided to take the game offline beginning September 6, 2024, and explore options, including those that will better reach our players." So they basically finish there, and then they kind of go on to talk about how you can get your refund, both physically and digitally. I don't know if you've seen, as a side kind of piece as we go into the conversation, that the used eBay and Marketplace copies of Concord going for like hundreds of dollars, which I think
shot up.
I do think it's going to become one of those rare games, and even a rarer platinum, right? Because you would really have had to have platinumed it in
record time,
2 weeks, right?
You had to max out your level to level 50, and the only way that people were doing that were they were just jumping off the cliff and dying to end the game. So you get, I think it was like the 100 XP for participating, and then rinse and repeat. And they basically just had to do that as much as possible.
Yeah, I saw there was a trophy, maybe it was something linked to deaths. So people were like in the game, just jumping off the map, just constantly trying to get that trophy. Like, it's super interesting stuff. So we're going to break up the conversation, like I said, Concord being one thing, but obviously so much has gone right and wrong with Sony since Jimbo's been in the role. But let's start with Concord. I think my high-level thoughts and feelings was the reception of the game was met positively from a gameplay perspective, but it was clear it was lacking from an artistic design perspective. In addition to the price point, I think the expectation of the hero shooters in that genre would be free to play. And it was clear from the initial beta, which was supposed to be for those who pre-ordered the game, and then the team made it open because I think they quickly realized there wasn't enough players in there, that this game wasn't lighting the world on fire. But, I think we spoke about it on the show before, Sean, but I mean, to have a life less than 2 weeks for a AAA $100+ million PlayStation first-party exclusive has got to be the biggest flop I think they've ever made.
I think if we go back to one of the shows a few weeks back when Concord first made their announcement in one of the PlayStation showcases, I'm pretty sure I said we won't be talking about this game in 6 months.
Yeah.
Well, Sean was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not only we're not going to be talking about it, we are going to be talking about it, I guess, but only because it lasted 12 days. Kim Kardashian was married for longer than that to Chris Humphries.
Yeah, it's. I've seen
70 days.
I've seen some of those things where it's just like, this has lasted longer. I think someone posted a mosquito lives longer or some fly lives longer.
My paycheck lasts longer.
Yeah,
my paycheck lasts 14 days.
Wild.
That lasted longer than Concord.
What are your thoughts around some of the things I briefly mentioned around what the feedback reception was like? Do you agree that overall the people who played it seem to be happy enough with the gameplay? It's not like it seemingly reinvented the wheel, but it's not like the game release broken, and obviously the servers weren't being maxed out, so maybe that wasn't a fair tick on the box. But it doesn't seem like the game. Well, it's clear the game didn't launch broken. But what do you kind of think around what went wrong?
I think at the end of the day, we can hear the stories about the budget. The over $100 million spent in making the game, the 8 years in development that it spent, and I know there's fake rumors about a prototype Infamous crossover, which was never happening. They're gonna make all these rumors, but at the end of the day, you're trying to sell a heater to people who are living in 45-degree heat. They don't need it. It's summer. They don't need it. Wait till winter when it gets cooler, and everyone's kind of sick of these first-person games, and they want a new online, game. That's the time to do it. They've launched it right at a time, right before you lead up into Christmas, where you've got major blockbusters that end up coming out this time of year, right after you've had Helldivers 2 as your big massive game as a service, in terms of how successful it's been. It's kind of wound up in that really interesting spot where if it did succeed, it would have either had to really compete, which as a full price game compared to free to play games in the same area, not going to happen. But you're giving people such a short fuse in terms of being able to play it and really enjoy it before everything else comes along. So I think it was doomed from the beginning in terms of the launch period. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably the thing that's going to kill it, or that has killed it. I think it's the launch window.
Interesting.
The game, from my perspective, the game itself isn't bad, and I've seen gameplay footage and all that sort of stuff. But we said at the start, it looks like Guardians of the Galaxy with a new skin, except Overwatch.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's a couple of factors there that'll appeal to gamers who play the five-a-side online shooters, but you need to be able to have the time where people are going to be sitting at home wanting to play these sorts of online games. Whereas right now, our biggest releases that we've had recently, you've got Black Myth, which, single player, everyone's enjoying it. Astrobot's come in, another single player game, everyone's enjoying it. Okay, Star Wars Outlaws didn't do the same thing, and obviously I'm talking about the bigger games that are coming, that have released. But this is the time where those single player games really thrive. And so, I feel like it's the launch window. If they did this, maybe a month before Helldivers, it would have at least got a little bit of traction before Helldivers absolutely killed it. Yeah. But it's in the bad window of August, September, right before we hit big season. I think regardless of its launch window period, whatever, I don't think this game was set to fail to begin with. But I do agree that this
if it was going to come out, maybe, you know, a January where it's quiet
Perfect.
and it's at least something new for people to play. And I guess Sony was looking at the data and like, well, Helldivers was, you know, $40, $50 or whatever it was, and 12 million plus copies sold. Why can't Concord do it? But I think the difference is Helldivers provided a different experience. It's something that isn't really readily available out there, where the hero shooter is a crowded genre already, and most of the competitors are free to play. So you're already asking more of the average player. And with so many other things coming out, Black Myth, Wukong, and so on and so forth, you know, if I really was in the mode for a hero shooter, I probably would just go to the free to play options. And Marvel Rivals is coming not too far away, and that's obviously a Marvel hero shooter that's going to do incredibly well. I do think there's something to be said around the character design, the storytelling, which is kind of the way that the game's been marketed, right? They have these vignettes every week and they want to tell a story. But, I mean, I like, there is inspiration, right? You can take inspiration, but the Guardian, like, there's a character literally called Starboy or Star-Lord, or not Star-Lord, but it's got something Star in it. And it's just like, it's literally like, you're Drax, you're whoever, you're the Groot character, you're Rocket Raccoon. Like, it's just really on the nose. So it's clear, like, when they spoke about the, you know, the 8 years in development, I don't know if that was all active development or, like, you know, this game lived in a spreadsheet somewhere and it was something being thought about, because the studio working on it was only opened in 2018. So I didn't quite understand that time frame, but it could have been incubated at another team and then whatever.
Your point there, actually, in terms of the fact that the character shooter essence of it, you compare that to a game like Helldivers 2. So Helldivers 2, their marketing campaign was strong because it was all about democracy, and it was about, you know,
You're
not
no
the
one
Starship
and who
Troopers
cares.
side thing.
And, yeah.
You're no one. It doesn't matter. You're there for the greater picture. And like, the character shooter is fine, but you need to be able to build characters, and that's where, like, Overwatch exceeded really well because it made you care about the characters.
Interesting design, interesting stories. Yeah.
But even besides that, they made you care about the characters leading up to the game releasing.
Mm.
And so you kind of knew who Tracer was. You knew who these characters were and who Winston was. But when you look at Concord, so it was announced only a couple of months ago. So usually by this stage, you would have 6 months worth of vignettes of these characters, understanding who they are, how they all tie in together. And then, okay, now we have a release date. Okay, now we have, like, you've got to have that kind of marketing strategy. But when they announced the game, everyone focused on the game. It was like, okay, no, like, yeah, okay, looks okay, but like, these characters, like, why should I care? And then it gets to the stage where it's starting to release, right around a time where you're hearing a lot of vocal people talking about woke characters and woke culture.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, Black Myth doesn't have this and that. Oh, but Concord does, which I think is an absolutely empty argument.
I just think the character designs are just nothing. Like, there's just no...
You can have nothing character designs, but if you make people care about the characters, that's what matters.
Yeah, and just to jump in
the
on the release of it, just so no one goes, oh, but actually, so they had the initial CG trailer. If you remember, there was the PlayStation Showcase, an actual showcase where most people walked away pretty disappointed because that's where we saw the Concord teaser, and that was the hamburger.
One last thing.
The hamburger shaking on the ship, right? And it had like that 70s vibe and kind of had that Guardians of the Galaxy feel, but it wasn't until the state of plays later on that we actually saw first a cinematic and then cinematic with gameplay, then just gameplay. But yeah, I just kind of feel like it didn't have anything going from it. Like, that's the thing. So people are already against these games before they even saw what they were, based on Sony making multiplayer games and, like, you know, the hardcore people kind of not wanting that. So they're already off to a rough start. And I think the more we saw of it, the more we're like, well, this just looks okay. It doesn't look like it's doing anything different. But we're paying, you know, again, you're paying $40 for it. So again, the game's been taken offline. I mean, I guess they're going to rejig maybe some of the monetary things behind the scenes, make the game free to play. Free
to play. That's the only thing that free to play. Like, and it had a PC release, but you know what?
There's no bringing it back. Nah, I think
You-
ultimately,
you-
if
I
they
think
could
it's
have, they
cooked.
would have cancelled it.
I reckon they'll use the assets for something else.
Yeah, and an idea that I had heard,
A single player game.
the idea I had heard floating around, which I actually think is a pretty decent idea, is like it's clear that the team's talented. Maybe you get rid of the art team, but the guys that did the gameplay, like the ex Bungie guys and so on, seem to have made a competent shooter. Why not get them to work on Last of Us Factions? Because behind the scenes, the rumor was from people who played it is the game's really good. It only got cancelled because Naughty Dog realized, I don't know how, that they couldn't, if they were to support it the way that the game deserved, they wouldn't be able to make their single player games as well. So, I mean, you've got the team, Concord's being reworked. Maybe you have a small team behind the scenes reworking Concord to make it free to play. But launch Factions and have this team be the Factions machine and just working on content with Naughty Dog. I mean, the game's
just
done.
Go straight to Marathon. They could just go straight to Marathon, to be honest.
Knock everything over. Yes, or just go straight to Marathon. Good point. Help out Bungie. Like they seem to be, in need of some support as well, and a lot of
need all the help they can get.
and a lot of the team is ex Bungie as well. So that's actually another good point. Yeah, maybe that's what ends up happening, right? Let's redivert. I mean, Sony purchased the team, so they saw something in either the game itself or the team to make them buy the game mid development.
I wouldn't. Yeah, go on.
No, go.
I know you mentioned like you blame like you wouldn't keep the art people. I don't think the art designers. I don't think it's their fault because they're just.
It's the
bringing up
directors,
kind of
right?
ideas. It's the art direction. It's how you want the characters to look, and then the team will try and build
And the
on that
world
vision.
and everything else with it.
It comes from the top. It's a decision made at the top, and it's how it's come out afterwards. And at the end of the day, like I think the characters were fine, but nobody gave a shit about them. Like make me care about why I want to play as this particular character. Yeah, you can talk about skill sets all you want, but this isn't meant to be like an actual like a Valiant, or like it's not meant to be a game where it's all purely about gunplay and mechanics. You're trying to create a world. You're doing world building, and one of the worlds, besides the whole gameplay inside the actual matches, is the characters themselves. Make me care about the characters. They didn't do that.
And the problem was it felt like from the outside that you knew the characters already because you're the Star-Lord type, you're the Drax guy that everything's super like on the nose and you don't get puns and all. Like literally those aspects of the characters were there. But anyway, so we'll see what happens with Concord, but that kind of ties into the more broader conversation around Jim Ryan's run at PlayStation. So as I touched on earlier, he kind of took into the role in 2019 prior to the launch of PS5, but I wanted to talk about how we feel about his run. So from 2019 through to March-ish this year, and obviously a lot has happened. Let's start there. What's your overall gut feeling around the brand in that time and Jim Ryan himself?
So gut feeling, I don't think the brand has changed in terms of whether or not it's more popular or whether or not it's, less popular, whatever it is. I think, if you're going to make the comparison to say Xbox is they're dealing with their own shit. I don't think the brand has been damaged per se, or helped in any way. However, he's overseen the release of the PS5 and seen it up to effectively now. Basically now. I think if there was a failure, if you can call it that, is the exclusives conversation.
Interesting.
And the reason being is that there was this whole push, and we spoke about it, right at the start of the generation about PlayStation, Xbox, and like what was, exclusives are kind of one of the selling points. And both Xbox and PlayStation have kind of diluted their exclusives to an extent. So PlayStation, we are still getting them. However, now with the introduction of PC, I think now, like we look at Concord, for example, or even Helldivers. So Helldivers was successful, but it was a hell of a lot more successful because of PC. PC couldn't save Concord, but there was a hell of a lot more players on PC than there were on PlayStation.
I think Concord, the understanding was that actually it was PlayStation. It was the opposite for Concord than it was for Helldivers.
Really? There was more PlayStation gamers compared to the 600 or so on Steam.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking like millions, but there was more. I think
Maybe
there was just probably right, like not much more, but there was more.
I think that's that's the only thing that I can see from from a player of all platforms. When I look at PlayStation exclusives, yes, there are exclusives, yes, and because I'm happy to adopt and play those exclusives at launch. In most cases, in some cases, I'm still waiting. But to see a lot of those go to PC, that's kind of if when I talk to people who are looking at buying a PlayStation, it's like, well, what games do you want to play? It's still the same story. It's still the same Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, FIFA,
Mm,
like which are on everything.
mm.
And it's like, okay, well, what about The Last of Us? What about Horizon? What about God of War? Oh yeah, that'd be cool, but it's not a selling point because they've already played it on PC.
Yeah, I agree. I think like kind of talking about exclusives for a second. I think exclusives have always been the flavor, right? It's not necessarily selling the console beyond the hardcore who are into the exclusives. It's more about like another reason on top of also having Call of Duty and also having Grand Theft Auto to get the PlayStation over the Xbox.
Yeah.
And I look at obviously I'm a pretty hardcore PlayStation guy, so I can kind of talk to what the brand has gone through, changed, some of the net positives and net negatives. I think a lot of people have looked at the Jim Ryan era with a bit more of a distaste. I think as a personality, he's definitely no Jack Tretton, Sean Layden. Like, he's not that type of guy. He gets his interviews through like Variety. He won't go talk to IGN. He won't, jump onto a podcast like Shu would. Like, he's very much taken the PlayStation brand. I do agree to your point. He hasn't kind of, obviously PlayStation 4 was a huge success as well. So it's not like he's really changed the path of PlayStation because it was already on the up and up since PS4. But what I think he has done is definitely introduce the idea of PlayStation becoming the prestige brand. I think that is very much a Jim Ryan thing, right? Like, even the way the console was marketed, the showcase, the very like the little transitions between the games with all the PlayStation logo and icons moving around. Like I said, the interviews with Variety. I think his leadership has tried to transition the brand to more of a Apple-like product, where there's that level of prestige that comes with their games, a level of prestige that comes with their console. I think
less Toyota, more Lexus.
Yeah. In a world where their competitors saying we're more the Toyota, right? We're more the, we've got our cheaper option, we've got cloud, we've got all these different things. They've kind of come in as the more prestige offering, which I think ultimately has worked in their benefit. I think there is the old fan of PlayStation in me, misses the press conferences, the in-person events, the more public-facing personalities. But I think if you look over the fence of what's happened with Xbox, having those things, having personality-led leaders in like Phil Spencer is ultimately, regardless of if he's done good or bad, also caused a lot of pain for the brand because he is so...
It's open to more scrutiny.
Yeah, so if like PlayStation doesn't say anything, there's kind of less to really scrutinize unless they do something like a Concord or, close the PS3 store or do something like that. So I think from that perspective, the shift of the brand, I think, is a net positive. I think there's also something to say about, the meteoric success of PS5 and launching it in a pandemic, and not really, there was points in times where I think Sony was like flying consoles out around the world, like we're hiring out their own planes loaded with PS5s and taking them to different countries. So the logistic kind of rollout of PS5, I think, is something to be commended. I think the launch lineup was really good as well. Like, you think about, and the showcases that had been around there. So all those things I think were net positives. Some of the, I think, negatives that have come from his run is I don't think there was a mistake to look to games as a service because it's clearly a money-making machine when done right. But I think the move to do it was too aggressive.
PlayStation's known for their single-player games.
Naughty Dog shouldn't have been taken off to make Last of Us Factions. Insomniac shouldn't have been making a Spider-Man multiplayer game, which ultimately got cancelled. Ben shouldn't have been making a, that side of it was a misstep, which has costed them, millions, hundreds of millions. Like Last of Us Factions was pretty much good to go. That's 150, $200 million down the drain. Concord, was a failure. There was a whole bunch of internal multiplayer games as a service cancelled and or delayed. Remember the initial announcement during their, I think, earnings call was 12 games as a service. That got pushed back to 6.
Like 3 years or something like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, and that got pushed back to 6, and now we're seeing less and less of that. So, again, I think the move to look to diversify PlayStation's portfolio was the right move. But how aggressive he did it, or was driving it behind the scenes, maybe kind of came back to bite them in the bum. And then the other aspect is the acquisitions, which would be good to get your thoughts on as well, where Sony historically purchased teams that they had worked with for a long time, right? You think of, Sucker Punch, and they were purchased after Infamous, right? And prior to that, they had made Sly Cooper. They had worked with them. Spyro on the console. They knew them very well. Insomniac, right? They didn't buy until after Spider-Man, I think 2019. And Insomniac's been making Ratchet and Clank games since the early 2000s exclusively for PlayStation. So, look at Firesprite, look at Firewalk, look at Bungie. I think there's a case to make that some of these acquisitions were premature. What do you think?
I think, the acquisitions, I almost think is in direct correlation to Xbox.
Yeah,
and
I think so too.
Their aggressive purchasing. So I reckon Sony got spooked in a sense, and so they're like,
100%.
well, look, like Xbox is buying these big companies, we need to do some purchasing ourselves. And so instead of working with those tried and true developers that they have worked with for years, they're like, okay, well, we need Bungie for XYZ reason, which they didn't need Bungie. All right, Bungie didn't need them. Well, actually, Bungie
they did
100% needed them.
Yeah.
But they didn't need Bungie. But they sold it as they're going to help us with games as a service. When at the end of the day, they were bailing them out. So I think the acquisitions kind of very interesting as an option for that they took. But I don't know. I got a couple of negatives that kind of irk me. Like, for example, we're talking about the lack of support for games as a service. That was their direction. Yep, they hark back on it, and they're moving back to single player story driven game. Yep, 100%, totally get it. They wanted a market to be there. The market wasn't quite there for the games that they were doing. They scaled back, and then they've returned back to what they were good at, or at least that's what we're hoping is the case. But even something like the VR, well, what's happened there? So this was a big market towards we're pushing towards the VR, and we're going to really support it. And then they've done basically nothing with it.
And dropped it.
And I think that exactly. And I think that's also to do with the direction that they're taking. They wanted to go into VR and push that a little bit. They wanted to go into games as a service and use that as the moneymaker that it is to kind of help fund everything else. And then when they're realizing, well, hang on a second, we might have market share, but these games aren't going to be doing as well as we think they're going to be doing, because we look at what their competition may be or what the actual market share is, and they're thinking, well, hang on a second, this isn't going to work out. Like even selling a $60 online shooter, you're not going to make as much money through that. Like one of the big examples that you have is there was like a rainbow icon or something like that you can buy in World of Warcraft. It was like an outfit or something like that. That the money from that singular microtransaction made more money than the entire game of StarCraft 2 in its entirety. One microtransaction. And that's the kind of thinking that Sony were like, oh yeah, we can get on that. We can have these sorts of microtransactions in these sorts of games. Wasn't going to work. And so now the story has changed to single player games, maybe free DLC, that sort of thing. So I think we're really going to see the fruits of that labor in the next maybe 2 years or so.
Oh, that's why we've got the drought that we have, right?
Because I reckon this shift, we might be hearing about this shift this year, but I reckon this shift's been happening for the last 2 years, and it's only really made it out to everyone else with the slow changes. It's not a sudden, by the way, we're pivoting. It's we're going to close Japan studio. We're going to stop development on Factions. We're going to stop development on this. We're
Sony London closed, yeah.
all that sort of stuff. We're going to do these closures just quietly over a period of time, which, people are focused on that, but they're not focusing on, okay, but this team stopped doing their games as a service game and they're now focusing on a single player game. They've been working on that for the last 2 years. That'll be available 2025.
Yeah, we're not going to see. That's why we've got the drought that we have like this year. And I know we just had Astro Ball launch, so I'm not going to say it was a full drought.
We'll get there.
But that does mean like Naughty Dog could have spent the time developing factions, making something else, and we might be closer to seeing that game. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, you can tell that the shift back to single player is now delayed everything else from coming. So I definitely agree. I think, there's definitely been highs and lows, I think, with Jim Ryan. I think the last thing I want to touch on with him in a positive light is, I think you're right around them being spooked with Activision, and I think Jim Ryan deserves a bit of credit in terms of like putting a massive spanner in the works of that acquisition, because I think
this is right after Bethesda as well.
He single-handedly, I think, caused a lot of headaches at ABK and at Microsoft in terms of like his appearance in the court hearings, and I think some of the results, I don't think it was him entirely. I think that the financials, I've told that story before, but I think that, the work he did to kind of delay and stop that acquisition ultimately led to the extended period of time that took to happen, and so much market shifts and so on and so forth happened during that time that, I mean, he did the job that he was sent out to do, right? I think ultimately they would have loved for the deal to be blocked, but you'd like to think that he deep down knew that happening was maybe a 50% chance, but the FTC blocked it, the CMA initially blocked it. A lot of that was because of the stuff that Jim Ryan and others said. So I think, ultimately the deal got done, but I think the work he did to campaign against it, I guess, from a PlayStation perspective, regardless of our personal thoughts on the deal, I mean, he was, commend him on that. I guess the last...
go on.
Go.
I was going to say, like, we said from the beginning that the purchase would happen.
I think I was a bit up and down.
50-50, but like we said it would happen. And it was Jim Ryan who delayed that. But he delayed it to an extent where you started to hear about the stuff about Call of Duty. And that was a big telling point, and that's kind of changed how Xbox has had to go with their exclusives as well. That's affected them in terms of how they're able to conduct business about these these AAA titles that have always been multi-platform.
They have to sell their streaming rights to Ubisoft now.
Exactly. So I think we might be looking at it from like a game perspective for consumer, where you delayed Call of Duty getting to Game Pass. Okay, cool. Like we can say that all we want, but there's all these little storylines which I think we'll hear about in the future about, because of the blockages to try and stop that acquisition, we're going to be hearing more and more about, because of that, this is what they have to do, or like this is what PlayStation has been able to do. I think we're going to hear more of that over the next couple of years, and that is because of Jim Ryan's doing. Yeah.
So we wish you the very best, Jimbo. Enjoy your well-earned retirement. He was with the brand, I think, since prior to PS1's launch, right? He was, I think, in the marketing, like head of marketing in Europe or UK or whatever side of the world, or governor. That
working on the Super Nintendo stuff.
Yeah, like he was there from the very beginning. So, definitely not a gamer. Like, you hear him talk about games, he's like, what are you playing? It's like, I'm playing the latest and greatest from PlayStation Worldwide Studios, and he's got that infamous photo of him holding the controller, but he's holding it from like the very ends of the.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, and now we've got Herman Hulst and Hideki Nishino taking over. Like, they split his role. He often spoke about how he hated traveling constantly from Japan back to America and the UK and so forth. So, I think he'll be one we'll look back on fondly in the future, but there is still clearly some issues with some of the stuff that's happened, right? Since
in the immediate,
yeah, exactly. All right, so we're gonna move on. We're gonna go into more of a positive light. It does turn out that this episode's a PlayStation themed episode, but if you liked what you've heard so far, please consider subscribing. If you're listening on YouTube, like, comment, and tell us what your personal thoughts are on dear crying Ryan, Jim Ryan.
People like you got to be honest. People don't care.
No,
They don't.
no,
They
no.
don't. They probably don't even know who Jim Ryan is. You could show a photo of literally anybody. They'll be like, "Oh,
Some old
oh,
white
yeah."
dude. You know what?
Yeah.
During the Activision acquisition, though, there was like millions of photos of Jim Ryan, like with the crying thing going on. Like, I think people were having a field day with, like our brand will not recover if this deal goes through. And what's happened? The deal's gone through, and
says the boot to the ant.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
deal's gone through, and it's ultimately screwed them even more. But anyway, all right, we're gonna move on. So Astrobot, like I said, Concord died, so Astrobot can shine. So Astrobot's launched this week. Sean, you've been playing it. I have my copy installed, but I had finished Black Myth Wukong, which we'll talk about later. You finished the game. This is going to be your review on our Covenant Busy Playing Something scale. But from the top down, tell us what Astrobot is and your overall thoughts and feelings before we get a bit more in the weeds.
Okay, so Astrobot was basically built off so Team Asobi worked on this, and they built off the main idea that they've had for Astrobot through Astro's Playroom, and also the release of Astro
Rescue Mission.
Astro's Rescue Mission.
Yep.
Which was the free game that was released with every PlayStation 5.
Yep.
And it kind of follows suit. So the idea of the game is it is meant to be a celebration of PlayStation's past and present and potential future in a 3D platforming exercise, you will, with a bit of a collectathon thrown in for good cause and measure. I found it enjoyable. I think that, for a simple game that has occasional power-ups, but it's mostly around a punch and a jump combo. If you do enjoy those sorts of games, I'd highly recommend giving it a go. But I think the game itself has come at the right time for PlayStation specifically. We can talk about the Concord thing, and I think that's very obvious. But at the end of the day, it's come at a point where it's a fairly short game. So I finished it I got the platinum in about 18 and a half hours,
Perfect.
which according to the True Trophies website, I'm number 199 on the site to
There you go.
platinum it, which is nice. Yeah, I should put that as a medal somewhere.
Put that on your resume.
Yeah, put that on my resume. Yeah. 199th on truetrophies.com to finish Astrobot.
Here's my backlog. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my backlog of 3,077 games. Yeah. I think that it's come not only at the right time because of the whole Concord thing, but because it is a short platformer. It's fairly simple to pick up and not quite easy to play. There are some fairly difficult platforming levels, but it's come at the right time, right before the big hits start to come along. The big AAA titles start to really come in. I think it's also a really good time for it to come as we're talking about exclusives with PlayStation, where we have some on both console and PC, or maybe they come to console, they're going to come to PC later. I'm pretty sure we're fairly safe in saying that Astrobot, because of the game that it is, the references that it has, is going to be a console exclusive. And I don't think we're going to have to worry about that coming to PC, to be honest, because most of the references are going to go over people's heads. If I had to find any sort of negative, I could twist the celebration of 25 plus years of PlayStation.
30 this year.
30 years this year. So if I want to twist it and say, yep, 30 years of celebration of PlayStation, I think it's also 30 years of celebrating PlayStation's graveyard, because there's so many reminders of games that could be continued. Things like your Sly Cooper, things like your Infamous, like these sorts of games, which, I know, Josh, you hold them in high regard, but we don't have new games for a lot of them. Like, even there's Bloodborne in there. Okay, well, where's Bloodborne on PC? Like, we got the third party working on it in terms of not even PlayStation. It's just someone making a PC mod. But it's kind of a reminder that PlayStation has all these different IPs.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of focusing on what sold really well, like make a new Ape Escape or something like that, they want to focus on brand new IPs, and that's where that games as a service idea and all this sort of stuff comes in. So I think with the release of Astrobot, with the changing of the guard of Jim Ryan to Herman Holst, and with the changing of the perspective of, okay, well, maybe we do want to bring out those banger single player story driven games or fun games, more about the fun than,
Mm.
the emotional experience. I think Astrobot's come at that really good time, and it could potentially lead to, you know, a change in where PlayStation's direction could head. So
Sounds so
as much as it's like a fun game to play, and you really enjoy yourself while playing it. Like I had fun playing it, and I spent literally all day Saturday just playing it. I could have gone out, no, I
no.
played the game. Um, I really enjoyed it, but I think that if you really wanted to delve into it, I think there is a greater message for what this game does bring, and you can kind of see that already in some of the critics. You can see it in some of the discourse online. And it's not even really discourse; it's more people praising the game and asking, why don't we have more of these? Like, we don't need to have an Astrobot every year, but it goes to show that, with enough love and attention, and yes, they're going to talk about the 3-year development cycle of 60 people working on it compared to, your Concord and all that sort of stuff. You're going to hear about that.
Yeah.
But Team Asobi, they know what they're working with. They know how to build a world and a character that you care about. And not only that, they use the power of the PlayStation 5, not just about the pretty graphics, but the fact that you can have 1,000 different objects on the screen, all can be interacted with your character. So all gems on the ground, and you can hit every single one of them. And the particle physics, and even just the physics engine for that's the power of the PS5.
Mm.
So not only is it, like, in terms of gameplay, simple, effective, and easy to play, not only does it look cutesy, but it utilizes the power of the PS5 in terms of the vibrations on the controller for the DualSense, but also the physics engine in the different objects that you can have. And at the end of the day, you can wrap it all in a bow and say, look, yep, this might be a full price game, but you're going to get a good 15 to 20 hours out of it. It's probably going to be one that, might stay in your library. There's free DLC down the track,
Mm.
and you can put Astrobot in a cute little outfit. So
That's awesome.
there you go. There's my little summary.
No, that's awesome. And you know what? You really made a really good point around, like, it coming at the right time, because, we just spoke about the criticism of the brand over the last, since 2019. And we don't ever, or we rarely do, see first party release a game like this, right? So I think it's a a nostalgic trip, not only in terms of the references to games of old, but also a nostalgic trip in terms of the way games were made. And like you said, the smaller team, the smaller budget, but still high quality, and still having, the things that people look for. I can't wait to play it. Like, I was very much wanting to get Black Myth done, because I'm like, I just need to get through it so I can start Astro.
Good decision.
But
because when you play Astrobot, that's what you're going to be playing.
That's what I'm going to be playing. And as someone who loves the brand, and was like, oh my god, there's the PlayStation Pocket reference in the PS5 game. Like, that stuff is awesome. And I do wonder as well, like, I saw a tweet today from some random person. It was like, hey, like, I've purchased Sly Cooper on PS2, backwards compatible on PS5. Never played it before, but I saw the character in Astrobot and thought it was cool. I wonder as well if Sony can gauge, like, which character skins there is being used the most, right? Like, I'm sure the Bloodborne one is, but, like, if they find that Jak and Dax is being used by X% of people, and it's like, well, maybe there's a market to bring back Jak and Dax. I'm not saying Naughty Dog need to do it, but someone else could,
Well, the pre-order bonus was Parappa the Rapper.
Yeah. I mean, like, things like that. So, I've always said that I like how Sony will, like, put things away, and I think that's what made them special, is they're not, we're not still getting Jak and Daxter games 20 years later. Like, they've moved on to Uncharted, moved on to Last of Us, and now we don't know what's next. Probably more Last of Us and maybe something new. But that means they do have this back catalogue of IP that people do hold close to their hearts. In terms of the Covenant review scale, where do you land on your official review? Do you want to go through the rankings so people have an idea what they are?
So I'll start from the bottom. So we do have it from a 1 to 10, but I don't know, I really don't like it. So we've called it something else with our review scale. It's 20 points because we couldn't have 10. But
we do
basically,
half, 1.5.
yeah,
two.
There's halves, yeah, and all that sort of stuff. So basically, we'll start at 1. So 1 is an actual dumpster on fire. 2 is unplayable. 3 is terrible. 4 is bad. 5 is meh. 6 is okay, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, 10 is a modern masterpiece. So I think, and this is me and my monkey brain. I
Talk
don't
about the
like
monkey later.
giving. Yeah, maybe later. But I don't like giving ones. I don't like giving tens.
10 needs to be like, obviously
Yeah,
nothing's perfect, but 10. I don't like webs.
is as close to perfection.
Yeah, I feel
as you
like we're
can get.
too open with 10s. Like people are getting 10s to everything these days.
I think this game is amazing. I think it really is, at least. And you look at Metacritic, which I'm sure you'll be able to roll off the numbers in a second, Josh.
94.
We'll go to show that. Yeah, 94. So that's roughly where I'd be putting a 9 to a 9.5.
Yeah.
Because at the end of this game, like, I finished the game and I finished some of the hardest missions and I got the last of the collectibles. And I was able to put the game on the shelf and say, that one's done. I had a good time. But I know that, if someone was to come around and say, hey, I want to play the PlayStation, but I just want to pay like a little basic game or something like that, I can pop it out. And if it's not Job Simulator on the PlayStation VR, then it could be Astrobot. It's that type of game where you can go back and enjoy it. But then, for me, myself, I played Astro's Rescue Mission, and I 100%ed it. Never touched it again until the free DLC. And then I cracked it out, got the extra trophies, and I was like, okay, that's enough for me. That's kind of how I see with this game, for me personally.
Yeah.
So I think like for me, it's a one and done. For you, Josh, it's the type of thing where I think you'll finish it, you'll say that was great, but then you'll probably spend another half hour in the archive looking at the different consoles and looking at the different characters and the kind of moves that they do when they're all scattered around, and the different references, the different outfits, and you'll dance with Crash Bandicoot and that sort of thing.
Bring Nathan, my little 1-year-old, to sit down and be like, look, that's Spyro.
Yeah, no, you will do that.
Yeah.
And so I think this is the sort of game that means a lot more to someone like yourself. But as someone who enjoys all games, and especially if we're gonna hear the comparison, but when you reminisce about the 3D platformers of the past, so your Spyro and Jak and Daxter, and even your Super Mario 64, which is what you're gonna hear a lot. I think it definitely falls into that category. It's going to be a game that we're going to talk about in years to come as one of those really great games for what it was.
Awesome. I cannot wait to play it. Fantastic.
Any questions before you do play it?
No, I think I am set. I am ready. Like I said, it's installed. It's just I want to just dedicate my time to it because it's a celebration, and PlayStation's coming up to 30 years, I think, in December since the launch of PS1 in Japan. So it's definitely come at the right time, and it's good to see them, have a mascot again, like a real mascot character. Sackboy and Knack can rest now.
He's basically PlayStation Jesus.
Yeah. Is Knack in this game?
Yes.
Oh my god. Okay. All right. See, this is what I mean.
So I will give the epilogue.
I'll
give an epilogue,
okay.
and not about the game itself.
Okay.
Relax. Here's the epilogue. I bought the game on Friday. 100%ed it last night. Got the platinum. I returned it today. Got my money back.
That's like the old Josh get Game Pass, play Hellblade 2, and then get a free return.
I kept the there's a little comic book insert which I kept.
And you got the controller too, so.
Yeah, I got the controller. You can see it behind me. It's like up on the wall just over there in its box.
I should have got it. I should have got it. Like I said, waiting for the.
Have you seen what they're selling for?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I should have pulled the trigger, but I know we're getting with this PS5 Pro a PlayStation 30th anniversary controller, and I prefer to have that long term because I've got the 20th one boxed with PS4. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion.
Well, actually, I'll get a tangent for a second before, because I know you want to touch on Black Myth Wukong before we finish the episode, but I'm going to tangent for a second.
Go for it.
I did buy the Astrobot controller because I saw it as a pre-order, and I'm like, that's not going to last long. So I put my $10 down. I ended up getting it. I'll hang on to it for a bit. I did the same thing with the Halo Elite controller, the Series 2 Elite controller for the Xbox. All right, it's still sealed. I have not opened it, and I was thinking about it today. I was like, hang on. So I got that controller. I'm probably not going to open it because I've already got 2 PlayStation 5 controllers. But I also bought that Xbox Halo controller. Like, and that was $250.
Mm.
Still in its box. It's basically like a statue sitting next to the Master Chief
Yeah.
helmet up there.
It's
And I was
expensive.
like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna jump on eBay. I'm gonna have a look at recent like listings for how much this controller is sold for. How much do you think it's sold for? Like just average. There's an
$700.
average number. You're close, 750.
$750.
$750 that controller's selling for.
Wouldn't
And I'm like,
surprise me. Yeah.
yeah, wait another, year or so right before the next. Well, actually, another 3 years before the next Xbox. If it's not backwards compatible, that's the time to.
Yeah, that's the time to let it go. No,
Yeah.
100%. These
Anyway.
controllers, go for crazy money. And I do regret it because I think the controller looks awesome, like that blue gloss. But anyway,
you sure you don't want to buy it from me?
Oh, well, if you want to sell me it
Crack a
for
deal.
what you purchased it for, I will. All right, we're going to move on to another game, and that is Black Myth Wukong, which we have spoken about previously, so this will be more of a shorter segment, but just an update. I've officially finished the game yesterday, closer to 50 hours. Got both endings, including the secret ending. And high-level thoughts, man, if this was the first game I had, first AAA game my studio have ever released, I would be, over the moon. 18 plus million copies sold, one of the biggest launches, single-player launches of all time on Steam, racking in the bucks. Black Myth Wukong is ultimately a amazing game. I am landing on, we just spoke about the review scale, 1 to 10 with points in between. I am landing at an 8.5 based on some of the technical hurdles I think that the game suffers from. I was running it on balance mode on PS5, which I think drops the frame rate to kind of like between 30 and 40, and then the resolution's not quite 4K as well. And I think on the whole, that worked fine. But it definitely seemed the more I got into the game, especially chapter 6, which is the final chapter, that I had to reset my console twice. I was struggling on this boss and the game was basically dropping to like 5-10 frames per second. I was just getting my butt kicked because I couldn't see what was coming because
Talking about how good the PS5 is, and now you're like, nah, can't handle Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah, and I think there is something with Unreal Engine 5, like these high-end Unreal Engine games, because even Lords of the Fallen, which was another Unreal game, chugged a little bit on PS5. But all in all, I don't think that it's enough to deter anyone from playing it on PS5. I think ultimately it runs good enough. And after I rebooted the PS5, like, it ran fine. Like, because I was Googling and I'm like, is this chapter broken? Like, what's going on? And someone said, like, just reset your PS5 and go back in and the game will run better, which it did.
Try turning it off and again.
Yeah, that old chestnut. But ultimately, yeah, it's a third-person action game. It isn't a Souls-like. The more I've spent time with the game, the more I can confidently say it isn't a Souls-like experience. It's more of a Devil May Cry experience. It does have inspiration in terms of some of the mechanics, right? You talk about bonfires and your enemies resetting and a stamina bar, but the actual act of playing the game is more like you're playing a somewhat linear, somewhat open world-ish Devil May Cry. The story, as someone who doesn't know Journey to the West intimately, I thought was really well done. It didn't kind of answer every question I had. It did make me want to go and learn more about the characters and Journey to the West itself. But I actually found that the last chapter, like the last chapter of the game, which people seem to have a lot of issues with from a gameplay perspective, really fun. And I think that the way that they kind of tie in with the original story, and there was an emotional gut punch that I felt when I was playing it. I'm like, man, this is really making me feel something. For a story that I don't quite understand, a character I don't quite know, but I'm feeling something here. So I would highly recommend people play it. I think it's going to do great or look great. Well, it's doing great, but looking great on PS5 Pro. I think it just needed a little bit more time in the oven. But all in all, from a gameplay, from an audio, music, it's great. I think the only criticism really is some of the polish, especially in Chapter 6. And the game needed a map, like a mini map. But beyond that, like maybe some lip syncing with the English dub. But even that, you kind of get over pretty quickly because most of the characters are like animals or wearing masks or things like that. So you're not really noticing it. You only really notice it when you see humans on screen talking because you're like, you can tell that the audio doesn't match. But yeah, really great game. 8.5 on our scale, and I'm ready to put it down. I did the secret boss, which actually takes you to probably the most epic part of the game that you wouldn't see unless you do it, which I find interesting. And then had to go complete the last boss again. And it really was like from a difficulty perspective, because I know people talk about, these styles of games and the difficulty. I think I was explaining to you, Sean, was like, 50-60% of the bosses I could do in my first or second or maximum third try. There might be about 20% that was like the fourth try. And then mostly,
That's normal.
Yeah, the last 10-15% were those like secret chapter bosses, which, by the nature of what they are, were the most difficult. And those did take 30-40 minutes, like an hour. There were some that I put down. I'm like, I can't do this. And then went back to it the next day and did it on my first try. All those different things. But, when the price comes down, it is only digital. Sean, I really think you should try it because it's just a really well done action game that is just like one and done in terms of a great 50-hour experience if you want to do most things. I didn't do everything. A really cool story, a graphical, tour de force in terms of like this game looking wild on PC and hardware. And yeah, I can't wait to see. I think they've kind of spoken about that they want to do a series in Chinese mythology, and that their next game will be, or the next thing they release will be like a Elden Ring type expansion, not a sequel, direct sequel. So hopefully we see something in the next 2-3 years.
Do you know if there's going to be a physical release?
I mean, with how well it did, I think there's no harm to do it. Like, I would do a PS5 Pro like physical release where it's like
that's what would get me, because digital.
I know.
I'm always finicky with like buying single player games digitally because I know like I buy it digitally, I have to have it there forever, sort of thing. Whereas at least if it's physical, I can finish it, and once I'm done, I can get rid of it, sort of thing.
It's like Alan Wake 2. Like I'm thinking about rebuying it now because now they're doing the physical edition. I'm like, God damn, like I just purchased the game last year, but I love that game. And I know Black Myth Wukong in some parts of the world launched physically, but it was without a disc. Like it just had a code in the box.
Yep.
But I mean, yeah, I probably would rebuy it if they do. You know what I think will happen if they do the Elden Ring type expansion, and there is like a combined version of the game physically, I will probably rebuy the whole thing. And I think off the back of how much money they made, they can afford to print some discs. So yeah, if you haven't already, based on our recommendations for both Astrobot and Black Myth Wukong, check those games out and let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on either of the games. If you're playing them, if you're planning on playing them, or why you're not playing them. Let us know. Either way, we're here for it.
Probably because they don't have a PS5.
That is true. That is true. I mean, you can play Black Myth on PC, but who does that anyway?
Everyone but you.
Everyone but me.
I'm guessing that leads to our final question that you had for the day.
Yeah, I just wanted to very, very quickly kind of talk about, our favorite games of the year so far. Is that what you're referring to? You're talking about the other thing?
Yeah, no, that's literally the last.
Yeah.
We have a run sheet, and I'm looking at the last question. I'm like, you could have done a massive segue for that.
I could have, but we have. All right, fine. How about this one? We've spoken about some of the greatest games that have launched so far, and I'm interested now to hear your thoughts on if these games are making your top 3 games of the year so far, and if we also think that these games will make the Jeff Keighley Game Awards. So, 2 questions. First question, your personal top 3 games of 2024 so far? And the second question, do you also think those 3 games will be in the Jeff Keighley Awards?
Okay. Well, I was ready for that second question. That first question, I'm going to have to do a little bit of scouring.
That's all right. You want me to go first?
Played. You can go first.
Okay. So, without playing the game, I think Astrobot is very quickly going to become one of my personal favorites of the year. And I do also think it will be nominated. So that would be my first pick. And the other 2 is like quite obvious if you know me. Black Myth Wukong and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think so far, obviously, I haven't played Astro Bot yet. Final Fantasy VII, it's probably still my personal pick. But I can kind of see a world where Black Myth wins it, or even Astro Bot. But definitely, like I said, those three games I'm pretty confident to lock in, and I also think I'm confident in locking them in for the Jeff Keighley show. What about you?
Okay, so funnily enough, I'm pretty sure we are on the same page here.
Mm-hmm.
So the three games that I think will be part of the Game of the Year conversation, brought to you by Jeff Keighley, would be Astro Bot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Black Myth Wukong. I think those three are very solid. The three that I've played this year. Now I'm going through a little bit, but I think two of them that I want to mention. One of them is Astro Bot. The other one's Helldivers 2.
Yeah.
I think we can't say no to that. I'm having a look at my list to see like what games I've played and all that sort of stuff.
How many nominees do they usually have? Is it 6?
6.
All right, let's put our hypothetical Jeff Keighley list together. So I think we're in agreement. Astro Bot, Helldivers 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong. Yep. What are the other two? Regardless of if you think they're your personal picks, I think I can guess one of them, and I think it's actually going to be not a surprise, maybe a surprise.
Yeah.
I don't know why I sounded like Trump there. Bit of a surprise. How do I even pronounce it? Balatro, yeah? The mobile... Balatro. Yeah. I think this game's going to be like the, your one, indie nomination. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the Vampire Survivors of 2024. I think Balatro will get the nom. So that would be my 5th pick. My 6th
What's
pick.
your Nintendo pick?
Good question.
Here's my 2. If I had to do another 2, it'd probably be Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth.
I was thinking that.
And Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
Yeah, I think I would personally go... All right, these are my picks. I think either Balatro or Animal Well, but I'm pretty confident Balatro will do it. And for the 6th pick, I'm not thinking we're going to get Mario. I think we will get Like a Dragon.
So no Nintendo games.
I mean, there's still time left for the year. I think they're releasing a few games this year as well. So isn't the Zelda game coming this year?
Yes.
And the Mario Luigi Brothership or whatever it's called. So, I mean, they still have time, but
Ace Attorney, Marvel Capcom, Funko Fusion, Plucky Squire. There's not much. Disney's Epic Mickey Rebrushed, which is that Wii game that's getting the redone. So Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom comes later this year, so that's potentially one. I'm having a look at everything else that's potentially coming. Super Mario Party Jamboree probably won't be there. Sonic and Shadow Generations.
No, I think
won't be there.
Like a Dragon, Helldivers, Balatro.
Yeah, Mario Luigi Brothership is November 7. Yeah. I think that's too late.
And I think maybe some of the, could be mentioned, but maybe win other things. I think we'll see Warhammer. It seems to be doing really well. Stellar Blade, Tekken 8. Like, there's some other big ones.
Stray's coming to Switch.
Yes, I did see that. That will get noms elsewhere. But yeah, I think the 6, if we're all in agreement, FF7, Black Myth, Astro Bot, Helldivers, Balatro, and Like a Dragon.
Yeah, see, I'm with 5 of those. I don't think Balatro...
Balatro might not make it, right? And there's still games coming this year.
Yeah, but like from what's released now, I think there's going to be a Nintendo pick. And at the moment, Thousand Year Door is the only big one. But Legend of Zelda could easily take that. Because the art style and it's based off Link's Awakening.
And it's Zelda. They always make it
Zelda.
Yeah. But all right, well, let's leave it at that. I hope everyone's enjoyed this episode. And like I said, we are moving to a fortnightly cadence. But what that means is we can have more in-depth, longer conversations like we did today, covering some really great topics from Jim Ryan's run through 2019 to 2024.
Which
Astrobot
only Josh
review.
cares about.
Yep. Black Myth Wukong as well. So we will see you again in a fortnight. Again, follow us on YouTube, Twitter at Joshua LaRosa, at Holy DePrawn for Sean. Let us know what you think of the new layout. Let us know what you like, dislike, so on and so forth. Maybe ease up on the dislike stuff, but if you like anything,
let us know.
let us know.
Let us know. I'll fight you 1v1 IRL.
But it has been a pleasure, Sean. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you before the fortnight, but in podcast, Josh, I'll see you in a fortnight.
Yeah, aren't we catching up?
Yeah, we're going to see the new Transformers movie on Friday, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah, who knows? We might be no podcast. We might not make it, so we'll see what happens. But thank you for joining me. Have a good night. And I mean, what do we want to say? I think we still need to get PS3 backwards compatibility natively on PS5. I think that's still
the push. Yeah, that's still the push at the moment. But you know what? I've got another option here.
Go for it.
Get your shit together, Nintendo. When's the Switch 2 coming out?
Good one.
When?
You let us know.
I want it. Yeah, give me the Switch 2. Backwards compatible. Let's go. Where we at?
Mr. Nintendo, what's going on?
It's going to come soon.
Reggie.
We're going to get I swear we're probably going to get an announcement this month. It's going to be one of those things. We're going to get it like end of September. There's going to be some Nintendo Direct. I know we just had one and we had the indie showcase, but I feel like we're going to get one soon.
We shall see. We shall see. Have a good night, everybody. Stay safe. Stay active. Goodbye.